In this tutorial, we're going to discuss source evaluation. That is, once you've found some resources to use for your paper, how do you decide if they're good resources to use? So why should you bother evaluating your resources? It helps you to find the most relevant information. It adds quality and reliability to your paper or project. You can find expert views and expert research. It weeds out unreliable, biased, and incorrect information. And it also makes sure you get the type of information that your professors are seeking, not only here at KCC, but especially if you are planning on transferring to a different school. Professors there expect you to have learned and know how to tell a good source from a bad one. They don't really provide you with much in the way of guidelines, but they will certainly lower your grade if your research isn't of high quality. What types of resources should you evaluate? All types of sources. With evaluating books, it's fairly easy to do. If you have found them in the library, it is because the librarian has read reviews about them and has selected them based on their merit. Also, the publishing process for a book is much more in-depth than other types of information, and as a result, it is usually meticulously fact-checked and edited before publication. In articles, the big question is, are they scholarly? They require a bit more evaluation in that you should look at what type of publication they come from. Is it for the general public as an entertainment or a short news bite type magazine, or is it geared to a more specialized audience with articles that are studiously researched and documented? We'll go over that a little bit more. Finally, it is most important to evaluate any resources found on the web. Anyone can put anything online, and you have no way of knowing who put it there, or if they were an expert on that topic, or just cutting and pasting from the paper they just turned in their 8th grade science class. There is no review process before items are put online, and no oversight committee running around stamping pages with a "you can trust this information" stamp. This all falls onto you as the user of the information. So what should you look for when evaluating a resource? You should put your resource through the CRAP test, and there's a handout for that. But the CRAP test consists of 5 things that you want to be looking for: currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. You'll also want to look at whether it's a primary or a secondary source, and whether it's a scholarly or a popular source. And I'm going to now explain what all these things are. For currency, you want to look at the timeliness of that information. When was that information gathered? For this, you can look at the citations that that person has included in their paper or article, just to see how old that information is. You also need to look at when the item was written and when it was published, which is usually the same date. You want to think about what information is appropriate for your topic, what's acceptable for your topic. Is it something where there's new developments happening all the time, so you kind of need something from the last couple of years? Or is it something that hasn't really changed much, more of a historical topic, where something a little bit older could be a fine resource? You want to look to see if your resource is being kept updated, whether in the form of newspapers, if they keep publishing updates to a particular topic, or on the internet. You want to look to see if there's a date of last update, and if somebody is still coming back to make sure that information is correct and update anything that might be out of date. And another thing you want to check would be the links to make sure that they're all functional. In your timeline of publication, generally once an event happens, you'll find the first references to it in a matter of minutes, a matter of hours, whether it be online or in newspapers. Those are kind of the first area where things happen. The publication timeline for magazines and journals are a little bit longer, so maybe a week or 2 after the event you might start seeing articles about it in magazines, and within a month in academic journals. Books, on the other hand, take a much longer time to be published, so it might be 2 or 3 years after an event has happened before it will be published in a book. So that's just something you might want to think about when you know what your topic is and you know kind of how old of information you're looking for, whether you should be looking in a newspaper or a book. The next item is relevance. First, you want to make sure that that resource provides the information that you need. Is it helpful for your topic? You also want to make sure it covers the right time period. You also want to try and decide, is this information unique or is it available somewhere else? Have you looked at a variety of sources before determining that this is the one that you need to use? And is it because there's something unique in that particular article? Does it go into enough depth? Does it kind of just reference your topic, or is it mostly about your topic? And if it is, does it just provide kind of an overview, or is it more focused? Does it get into it a little bit deeper? And then also you want to look at the intended audience and the language used. You want to know whether it's intended for a general public or is it intended for someone who knows a little bit about this topic and is kind of familiar with the terminology used in this area. A language can be a good key for this. Is it really overly simplified language and it's a little bit too elementary for your topic? Or is it information that anybody could kind of understand with a basic education level? Or is it something that's just way too technical and you wouldn't understand it unless you had had years of background in this topic? The next item is authority. You want to look at who the author or creator or organization behind that information is. And what are their credentials? What makes them qualified to be able to write about this topic and for you to be able to trust them? Do they have degrees in that topic, or do they work or research or teach in that area? Something that makes them worthy of your trust on that topic. You want to see if they have a reputation among their peers, as well as what other works they might have out there. The other works are important because someone who has 12 books on their resume is going to be someone you're likely to trust a little bit more than someone who has 2 websites out there. You want to look to see if they have provided any sort of contact information, phone number, an email, an address, some way that you can get a hold of them if you had more questions or want to argue with them about something they've written. They've provided a way for you to do that. You want to look to see if they have an affiliation or support from any particular organization, and whether that influences what you might think about them and their authority. And finally, one place where this comes in for a lot of students is in Wikipedia. Wikipedia in and of itself might be a good place to go and learn information just for your personal everyday life. But the problem with using it in academic papers is because its authority is highly questionable. You don't know who put things there, you don't know who changed them, you don't know where they got the information they were using when they changed it, you don't know if they're just changing it to have fun with somebody. So that's one of the big problems with using Wikipedia as an academic source, is you don't know who wrote it, so you don't know if you can trust their opinion or not. The next area is accuracy. You want to look at that person's original sources, see their citations in their work cited or footnotes or things like that to see how much research they did when they wrote it and what sorts of things they're citing. You want to compare what you're reading to your own knowledge and to what you've read in other works, just to see if there's anything in there that you blatantly know is wrong, or if you've read 3 articles about something that say all the same thing and this 4th one says something completely different. It gives you kind of a hint that you can probably trust the 3 that say the same thing and not the 4th one. You want to look to see if that information has been reviewed before it's been published, and if it has, who has it been reviewed by. Generally, you want to look for something that has been reviewed, and especially a peer review would be the highest level of review that you could find. A peer review means that that article has been circulated to other people that are considered to be experts in that topic, and they've been allowed to offer opinions or just read it over and have their say on whether something is published or not. You You want to look for spelling or grammar or other sorts of typos. While that's not necessarily mean that that information's incorrect, it's a sign that that person didn't care enough, didn't take enough time to fix those sorts of things before they published it, whether it was online or in a newspaper or something else. And once you start seeing those types of errors, it should make you wonder if they took the time to do the proper research before they published it. Finally, you want to look at the language or the tone that's being used and see if it is obviously biased in any way. If they are completely supporting one side of an issue and completely ignoring the other side, or giving just really ridiculous reasons why the other side isn't a valid viewpoint, it gives you a little bit of a clue that they're obviously biased and they're obviously trying to sway your opinion one way or the other. Along with that, the last thing to evaluate in the CRAP test is a resource's purpose. So what is its purpose? Is it trying to inform you about something, trying to sell you something, trying to persuade you in something, or entertain you? You want to look to see whether it's a fact, whether it's somebody's opinion, or whether it's propaganda. You want to look to see the amount of advertising content versus the amount of informational content, and whether you can easily distinguish which is which. Again, you want to look at that bias and see whether they're trying to convince you of their point, or if they're just saying, this is what I think. And finally, looking at their domain name can be a big clue as to what their purpose is. A .com website is a company's website, and that company exists for the sole purpose of making money. Their website to them is a marketing tool, so anything that exists on that website is only going to highlight the good and ignore the bad. They don't want you to see the bad side of their company. A .gov website is going to be a governmental website, so these are going to be governmental reports, governmental statistics, things that are coming from the government. A .org website means it's a nonprofit organization. Most students think that that means, okay, that's fine, that means they're perfectly trustworthy for my research. This is not always the case, because just like there are wonderful nonprofit agencies out there, there are other organizations out there that might feed you incorrect information to get you to agree with them, but don't make a profit at it. So that still makes them a nonprofit organization. And then a .edu website is going to be an educational institution's website. The only thing that you want to be careful with there is that sometimes student work is published to .edu websites, so you might want to be a little bit careful in evaluating whether that person has a background in your topic or not. Next, you want to look at whether something is a scholarly or popular resource. Scholarly resources are published by and for experts. They're peer-reviewed, so if you've written an article about heart monitors, other doctors and researchers and builders of heart monitors are going to read that article and offer their opinions on it before it gets published. They usually contain new and previously unpublished research. These are people that have spent their time doing some sort of experiment or study that's related to their area of expertise, and what they're publishing is the results of what they've been working on. Also, in scholarly sources, you often see bibliography, so it's going to tell you all the sources that they use to write that, and then it's also going to list that author's credentials, where they're studying or where they're teaching or where they're researching. Popular sources range from highly respected sources to general interest sources. Some ones you're probably familiar with are Time or Newsweek. These sorts of things employ staff writers or freelance journalists, so they're not experts in the field. They've just been assigned a topic to write about, and they're going to go out and research it and then write their article about it. The articles are much shorter and much less in-depth than anything you would find in a scholarly publication. They're not peer-reviewed before they're published. They might be reviewed for grammar or typos or things like that, but they're not read by experts on that topic. And very rarely do you ever find any sort of bibliography or works cited for an article in a popular source. The next thing you want to look at is whether something is a primary or a secondary source. This is primarily an evaluation of how close the author is to the information that they are conveying. So one way you might think about this is if one friend tells you about a fight that they were present for in the cafeteria, and then another friend says, "This is what I heard from Ben, who talked to Ashley, who heard it from Sarah." The first friend that was actually present is going to be a more reliable source. They were actually there, they saw what happened. Whereas the other way, you're hearing it from people who heard it from people who heard it from people, and every time it gets transferred, there's a little bit of room for error. So that's what this is an evaluation of. So for our primary source, it's going to present new findings, new theories, new data. And the author was present at the event. So it's either their own survey, their own study, their own experiment, or they were present when some event happened and they're giving their account of that event. For a secondary source, it's going to summarize the research or the data of others. So you see this often in the newspaper where they talk about some company did this survey and here's what it says. They're not the ones that did that survey. They're reporting on what these people said about their survey. It uses the interviews or opinions of others, and the people were not present at the event. They're just reporting on it. Some examples of secondary sources would be encyclopedias or textbooks. Primary sources are preferred to secondary sources. There are some special considerations you will want to use when you are searching on the web. You want to look at both the look and the functionality of the website to make sure that it looks respectable and it functions the way that it should. You always want to try and track back to a home page when you're on the website. And that can often happen if you do a Google search and it directs you straight into a side page of somebody's website. A lot of times that information about who owns that website or who put this information up there is all on the home page. So you want to try and track back and see if you can find the main page of that website. You always want to check out small and unimportant looking links. If there is some company that is putting out false information, they might tell you that it's false information, that it's not going to be in big bold letters on the top of the page. It might be some little link on the bottom that if you click on, it'll say, "Oh, by the way, maybe you shouldn't fully trust us all the way." So you want to always check out everything that you can possibly check out about a website. You want to look to see, is an author even listed? Is there any way you can remotely trust that information if you don't know who wrote that information? You want to look for facts or statistics that don't tell you where they came from or how old they are. If they say 27% of the country said a certain thing, you want to know whether that was taken last week or whether that was taken in 1967. That would make a big difference in how you use that information in a paper. Again, you want to evaluate the links, not only to make sure that they work, but to kind of evaluate, are they using good, well-respected, highly trusted sources. And then again, you want to look to see what sources they have used, if they list them, have they provided any sort of commentary or annotations on why they use them or what sort of quality those things are. And the final area of information that you want to be critical about is in statistics. You want to think about who they were collected by and if they have a possible interest in the outcome. So if there's a company who, if this survey went one way, it would be really good for them, and if it went the other way, it would be really bad for them. You would want to be aware of that before you put too much stock in what the results of that survey were. Again, you want to look to see if the results show some sort of bias. Look to see who they surveyed, if they only surveyed a particular population that they know would believe the way that they want them to answer. See if they're timely, if they're recent statistics. You want to make sure that their sample size was large enough and it was a wide range of people. You want to make sure that if they said 80% of the people that we polled said such and such, and they only sampled 5 people and 4 of them said that, well, that's not a very big sample size. You want to make sure that they polled enough people that the results have some sort of weight to them. You also want to look to see that there's a complete coverage, that they covered a wide range of ages, a wide range of races, a wide range of political beliefs, a wide range of economic levels. And finally, you want to make sure that it's either the primary source, that this is the company that did do the survey, or you want to make sure that there's proper documentation, that they've linked back to that survey or they referenced that survey in such a way that you could go find it if you wanted to.